Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, it's Tuesday night. Like every week, we're live. A real special guest for you tonight. Actually, when we started our Sachs Realty Tuesday Night Podcast, Jon was a guest. We were kind of talking a little bit before we went live here. I think we had like 500 subscribers. Oh man, I'm looking here on the screen. I see our regulars are showing up. We appreciate you guys. We have a lot to talk about tonight because one of the things that we get asked a lot is, should I buy a fixer-upper, right? So it doesn't really matter who you are right now, whether you're buying a house to live in. There's a lot of talk about investors on the standing on the sidelines. We have real estate crashing. Prices are coming down. Not quite the inventory that we'd like to see in this kind of a crash. It's very unique. But a lot of people ask, should I buy a fixer-upper? There are loans out there that allow you to do that and live in it. And then there's a lot of people that are thinking, maybe I'll get an investment property. Maybe I'll jump in the rental market. Maybe I'll try flip, because you flippers, I've flipped a bunch of houses. Jon flips houses. It's been a tough market over the last couple of years for people that invest in real estate, but we're going to have a great show tonight. We're excited for your comments and your questions. Are you looking at, distressed property right now thinking, man, that's the only way I'm going to find something that I can afford is to buy something that needs some love. So without further ado here, we'll welcome Jon Schoeller. Man, Jon, welcome back. Tell everybody who you are. And man, you're a family of YouTubers too. So not only do you flip, you guys, man, you got multiple channels. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Appreciate you having me on. So yeah, like you said, my name's Jon Schoeller. I've been real estate specific for about 6 years now. I've been in business my whole life not my whole life, but my whole professional life since I was 20 years old, started my first business. And just got into real estate around the age of 36 now. And, been pretty active in it. I've flipped over 200 houses now with my partners, Andrew and Steve, here in Charleston, West Virginia. I'm also really big into private money lending now. So my wife and I have built up, a significant amount of savings where we lend that money out, and we're funding anywhere between 5 and 10 homes at a time in various parts of the United States. Probably my favorite way to invest. It's probably the most passive way I've found to invest so far. My wife and I also own rental properties and an Airbnb. And we just tested our first Airbnb over the last 3 months. It's been going well, and we may be looking for more in 2023. But to be completely honest with everybody, I don't know how much more holding of properties we want to do versus just being the bank.
Yeah, it's interesting. Man, we got a lot to unpack there. We just started an Airbnb too. So, hear a lot of controversy. A lot of people right now are saying Airbnbs are tanking. I guess it depends on where they are. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Jon, thank you so much for being a return guest, a return contributor, and congratulations on your much success on your YouTube channels. But it's going to be interesting to hear how you are going to be answering some of these questions that are coming in. Guys, I see the questions and the comments, and keep them coming, and kind of hear what you think and your take on everything and what's going on in your neck of the woods. So I'm excited for tonight.
Jon, I was binging on some of your videos with our upcoming show, and I want to kind of dive in a little bit and just kind of tell everybody. And by the way, guys, check out Jon's channel. We have the link below, but his family has a channel. He has a Schoeller family channel, and we're going to drop that link below too. But check him out. They put out some amazing content and, very educational, very good quality content. So you have to definitely check out Jon's online presence, his YouTube channels. But Jon, I know when we spoke last time, your business, you have partners and you have a specific kind of job at your partnership, but you guys have been flipping properties. You said over 200 properties. Just kind of tell us what you're seeing now. You're in West Virginia, right?
Yes, that's right. Charleston, West Virginia. And, we're seeing what everybody's seeing. Slow down, right? But we tried to pivot early. Did we time it just right? No, it's impossible, right? So we're going to be left holding the bag on a property or two for sure. But that's why we have contingencies in place. That's why we have emergency funds in place. And, I think the unfortunate thing about the last couple of years is the people that got into it in the last couple of years, because it felt like a gold rush. It felt like you couldn't go wrong. Anything you bought, even if you went over budget, by the time you went to sell it, the ARV had increased 15-20%. And so that saved your butt. But now those people, you can't do that anymore. You have to be accurate with your numbers and have contingencies in your numbers, because the prices could move the other way by the time you go to sell it. And not only that, but all these people doing BRRRR strategies. The BRRRR strategy was working fine, but now if you started a project, 6-7 months ago and you have not got out of that yet in your refi, I'm willing to bet your numbers aren't great. If nothing else, you might be bringing money to the table. So I think this is going to get rid of not get rid of, that's kind of a rude way to say it, but it's going to expose a lot of flippers, a lot of investors that just got started and don't know how to plan correctly, or just simply over leverage themselves. The number one thing I see in this business, the number one thing I see people get in trouble is they get ahead of themselves and they over leverage. And I think that's like, there's taking risk is fine, but you got to take calculated risk. But some people will just leverage to the end. And when markets happen like this, it exposes them.
So explain what the BRRRR method is. And I know this is, for a lot of you, maybe you're thinking about getting in, doing your first investment property, and maybe you've seen bigger pockets, right? Because that's kind of where that started. That BRRRR method kind of started out. And a lot of people, they've got a great channel, shout out to Bigger Pockets. But, a lot of people, they get on and they don't really tell you about the down and dirty stuff. There's a lot of, flipper kind of educational information courses that you can buy. They teach you that you can flip with no money down or buy with other people's money. Obviously you can, but they don't tell you the kind of the down and dirty with that. But just explain to everybody what the BRRRR method is.
Yeah, so it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and then repeat. And so, this is a way to, if you borrowed money to buy the property, you could do this deal with very little of your own money, especially if you borrowed someone from me, like I'm a private money lender and I fund 100% of the deal. In fact, I just funded a BRRRR that was an Airbnb BRRRR over the last few months, and they had to bring like $5,000 or $7,000 to the table to get me out. But they're into this property, this $200,000 property now for $7,000 of their own money. But that was their plan. They knew they might have to bring money to the table at the end, and they prepared for that. I think a lot of people, when they're doing this strategy, they're going to walk away with a check at the end. Because if you do this and it works all in your favor and works perfectly, not only can you refinance out your lender, but you can typically walk away with more, with some cash, right? $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, depending on how good the deal was, if you bought it steeply discounted. And that technically is tax-free income. There's a lot that goes into this. Obviously, the more you take out, the higher your payment's going to be, and the more leveraged you're going to be. So there's a lot that, we could probably do an hour and a half just on the BRRRR method, but that's essentially the BRRRR. You buy a property at a discounted rate, borrow the money to do that, or use your own money if you want to, rehab it, obviously. And then you're going to rent it, because banks, before they refinance that, typically like to see some income on that property. And there's a thing called the seasoning period. All banks have different rules and regulations. Some are getting a little less lenient with how long it's got to be, but typical rules are 6 months. So after the rehab's done, you put a renter in there. And then after 6 months, you bring that property and the rent roll to a bank, and they will give a new appraisal on that based on your rent roll and just the value of the property. And they will give you a new loan against that. And with that new loan, you either get your own money back out of the deal or refinance the lender. And then you can keep some money. If let's say that you are all in it for $220 and it appraises for $350. Here's another important part. I don't know how long you wanted me to go into this, but typically banks are only going to give you 80% of the appraisal, right? So I just messed myself up with math and said 320. But all right, so I don't know if this is right, but they're going to give you about 260 of the 320, maybe 250. I don't have a calculator in front of me. So if you had 220 in it, that means you could actually take another $30,000 out of that deal and just keep it for yourself, do what you want, or you can leave it in and make your payment lower. So anyway, that's pretty much how the BRRRR, and then our last one's repeat. So you just keep doing this, right? Easier said than done. Nobody wants to tell you that the appraiser holds all the what is it? What's the word for it?
The cards.
Holds all the, that's a good word.
They hold all the cards.
Holds all the cards, because if the appraiser comes back low, and we all know there's almost nothing you can do about it other than get another appraiser and cross your fingers. But if they come back low and the next one comes back low, you could be up the creek.
Yeah. And, you know, when John's talking about the 80%, so, you know, when you're investing in houses, so we're going to talk about this in kind of different parts tonight, because if you're listening, a lot of what we're going to cover tonight, if you're listening and you are buying a home that you want to live in and you want to take advantage of maybe the 203K loan, which is an FHA loan product, you may want, we're going to cover a lot of things this evening and talk about hiring contractors, first picking a property, hiring a contractor, you know, getting the work actually done. So it kind of separates in buckets. If you're an investor and you're looking at buying something to rent and hold, what John's saying with the BRRRR method, and he's talking about refinancing and getting 80% loan to actual appraised value, ways that you come out with money in your pocket is when you buy it really well, you keep your costs down, and it appraises for, you know, what you really hoped for in the beginning. And then that extra money, sometimes, like when I buy a property, a lot of times I get either 100% of my money back when I refi, or I'll get even more back. I'm at least happy when I get 100% back. That means that I have 20% equity in the property, right? From what I paid for the property and what I put in repairs, that total is the 80% of what the property is worth. So when I refi and I get 80% loan to value, that gives me all my money back. Now, if certainly I can put it all back together at 70% and I get a loan for 80%, that extra 10% is the cash that John's talking about that somebody can put in their pocket. So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about, you say there's a couple of properties right now. There's a transition going on. And typically, guys, so you understand that real estate is a cyclical kind of business, right? And usually we see recessions in real estate when it comes to a glut or an oversupply. That's typically what causes a recession in real estate or a slowdown. We go through these, you know, hyper supply, right? And then you kind of fill up the properties, and then, you know, it kind of rotates. But we're not seeing hyper supply, but we're seeing prices come down without hyper supply. So this is a very unique time. And but John, even in the 2008 crash that people really remember, they put 2008 on it. It really started in 2005. And I was doing flipping back then and investing. And I remember, and guys, if you've heard my videos before, you've heard me say this, but we had the Baltimore Sun paper. It used to be an actual paper that went out. And it said the overpriced Baltimore housing market. It was in the spring of 2005. And basically what happened from there, over the next 3 years, we experienced a complete wipeout, right? So I had a lot of property back then in 2005 that I had to liquidate because I was in too deep. I was buying shells in Baltimore for $130,000, $140,000 that were worth $35,000, right? The prices were so hot leading up to the crash. So John, kind of tell us where you are right now with these couple properties. You say you may be underwater, and just how quick it turns, and, you know, kind of what you're thinking now. Do you think you're going to wait a little while? Are you still waiting for prices to come down? Just kind of give us an idea of your operation.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm not going to speak on specific numbers because obviously I have a partnership and lenders, right? So, but our lenders are completely safe. If any of them are tuned in, we always make our lenders whole no matter what. But yeah, I mean, a couple of things happened. It was like kind of the perfect storm. So if you started a flip, you know, 6, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, you have a lot going on here. First, you had really expensive or high lumber and just supplies that could blow your budget quickly. And those like they were eating into our contingencies even because of how much stuff was. And then not only that, you had two choices. You either pay a slightly discounted price, but because of supply chain issues, you'd have to wait 6-8 weeks on it. And if you're doing a flip or any rehab, really, you can't wait. You can't tell the HVAC people just wait 8 weeks. They need that stuff now. So you probably have to pay a premium for it. And so between that, and then obviously, as we got closer in the last 3 or 4 months, people have started to lose their jobs or there's been problems in the household where one spouse loses their jobs. It's happening to our contractors. We're losing contractors off jobs. And then eventually, now we're planning. I don't think we'll lose money on these couple of deals per se. I say underwater. What I mean by that is we're probably underwater from our projection. But I think we'll be fine, but we're going to make on it what would feel like underwater from all the time and effort put into it. But that's what we're planning to. We could do much better than that, but we're always planning for worst case scenario. You plan for the worst, hope for the best. And because we don't have any control over interest rates. Look, they're going to raise interest rates another 75 basis points more than likely tomorrow, right? Is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
I think so. So I know inflation's gone down, but people don't understand that's not going to reverse interest. It's just going to slow down how quickly they raise it. I think there's so much misinformation out here and people are getting so confused. And also people are like, there is no crash. There's houses still selling. It's like, it's not data. It's not the same day. Interest rates don't go up the same day and then the market crashes. That's not how it works. It kind of goes like a scale. If y'all can see this, it kind of just slowly transitions. And that's what we're seeing. We're probably somewhere in the middle right now, but the rates are going to keep going up. The interest rates are going to keep going up for at least the next 3 to 6 months, in my opinion. I'm guessing as good as the rest of the people, but that's what it seems like to me. So for us personally, we're just planning for that. Okay. So if interest rates right now are at 6.5%, then we're planning by the time we go to sell a house, it could be at 7.5 or 8. And if that's the case, I always like to argue that depending on how big your market, what market you're in and what price point you're selling your house, every time you go up 1% interest, you lose, a percentage of your buyer pool. Because it's true. That's the payment goes up by that amount too, which means the more money they're going to have to make, the debt to income is going to have to look good. And as we know, as that ladder climbs, your buyer pool shrinks. And so I think you should just expect for that and plan for the worst and hope for the best. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, well, and not to mention, John, the interest rates go up, the buyer pool shrinks. But now that all the news is out there that housing is overpriced and we need a correction, and well, the list goes on. Now people want to pay less, right? Yep. So not only are there less buyers, but the buyers are saying, hold on, if I'm one of the only buyers looking at this property, I'm going to take a shot, right? And the thing about investors, and guys, if you're thinking about getting in this, what John is saying here, he lends money. Lenders make money, hopefully, right? I mean, they're calculating their risks, but when you're doing hard money loans and things like that, the cost per day is really drives you crazy. I mean, you start panicking, you start thinking, well, I'm paying taxes now every day. I'm paying insurance every day. I'm paying interest carryover every day. So when those low ball offers come in, if you're an investor, you're thinking like, man, I should probably take this deal. I might lose $15,000 or $20,000, but if another 3 months, right, I could lose even more. So, but anyway, it's not for the faint, but let's take a couple questions before, John, we get into, how to select a property, because people want to know, like, I want to get in this. Or if you're sitting back and you're a homeowner, you're going, I can't afford anything that's out there right now. I might have to buy something that's distressed, something that needs renovation, and maybe a good opportunity coming up here, guys, for you to do that because we know the deals are coming.
A couple of questions that are coming in to go over what you have just talked about, John. How about this one from Jeff M? Hey, Jeff, what happens if your repairs are beyond the $30K repair limit on a $203K loan? Can you use your own money past $30K?
That might be a lender question.
Yeah.
I don't think John does
I'm
any
not
203K loans.
I'm not super familiar with, I understand 203K loans. We've sold houses because we sometimes do like quick flips where we sell it with equity in it. If the buyer wants to finish out the repairs of the house. So we basically buy it, clean it out, pretty it up, and then sell it. And they'll come in with a 203K to do their repairs. But I'm not going to speak on something. I don't know all the limits and rules and regulations of the 203K. I do know it's a great plan for people who want to live in, their flips, or at least for the first year or so. But outside of that, I couldn't comment.
Yeah, let me try, Jeff, and just kind of, and forgive me if you're a loan officer out there and you're saying, he's getting this wrong, certainly reach out to us. We have great 203K loan officer referrals that we can give you. They know this stuff inside and out. But I do know that there are a lot of guidelines, specific guidelines for this. I know that there is a VA loan because fixer-upper loan, but there's caps on what you can fix up, like amounts. But the FHA 203K, I think, is a little bit more lenient with amounts and things like that you can do in renovation as long as it appraises. So what happens in any kind of, let's just say, construction to permanent kind of loan, ultimately you need to provide an estimate. And with a 203K, one of the struggles with the product that I've found through having clients that have used it is that, you're trying to buy a house, and it hasn't worked, by the way, guys, for years. This hasn't really worked because the market's been so hot. But now that we're starting to see the sales slow down, the buyers, they want to try and use this product, and the sellers are willing because, hey, nobody else is coming to the table. So what happens is you have to get a contractor that will separate the material cost and the labor cost on this kind of a product. They want to see where the cost breakdowns are. And then they have underwriters that are going to look at it. They're going to, basically see whether it's practical. They're going to have an appraiser, kind of appraise it as like an after repaired kind of value and things like that. When you get into this thing, you're borrowing X amount of dollars, for your loan. I don't know, Jeff, how much to the table you can come with extra cash or how much they can requalify you for, things like that. They're more lender questions, but I know it is a great product out there. If you guys are looking to buy something that needs renovation, ask a lender, inquire with us. We'll point you in the right direction. It's a good product.
I found some information on it real quick. So I guess there's two types of 203K loans. I'm learning something as we go here: a limited and a standard.
Right.
So you would want
Streamline.
if you want to go standard, your repairs and renovations could go above 35,000 if you went the standard route, and there's a minimum of 5,000. But if you go the limited route, you cannot exceed the 35,000. I still don't know the answer if you can start bringing your own cash. I'm assuming you could, because I don't see why they would care, but I don't want to say yes or no. But it sounds like if you have a big renovation, you're going to want to go standard 203K. That's the most I could find on that.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yep.
Power of the internet.
Right.
How about this one from Real Estate Mindset? Hi, Travis. Thank you so much for your question. John, do you provide the appraiser with the comparable data for the BRRRR refi?
Yeah, if you can get information to them. I mean, it's always nice to be prepared. I mean, I know people, we haven't done this, but I know people that go as far as to leave all the comps printed out on the table so the appraiser can see them when they walk the property. But you got to be really careful with this because, look, appraisers, just like anybody else in any other industry, you got some good ones, you got some bad ones, and you got some that that are ego. So if you do that or send them those, they could take it as, hey, this is how you do your job. Like, I'm going to do your job for you and send you these. That's not what you're doing. You're just kind of probably like giving yourself an insurance policy and be like, hey, make sure you see this property right up the street that looks just like mine, and all the things that they have done and we had done. I think a happy medium here is to leave a printout on the table or get it to the appraiser if you're able to. Sometimes you can't have communication with them before they go out there. You won't even know until the day of. I know people try to meet them at the property and all that. Just be careful with pushing too much. But what you could do is leave all the things that you've done to the property and the value that you think that brings to the property, print it out on the table. And you could even generally leave that out as like if you're leaving it for prospective buyers, right? You're not really leaving it for the appraiser, but maybe he or she sees it, right? So that's a good idea, maybe, depending on the appraiser. So just understand that some could take it as you're trying to do my job for me, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and from a broker side, standpoint, or an agent, we're in a completely different situation because we price it. So if you're the listing agent, it's kind of different than being the investor that's trying to refi it with a bank and try and say to the bank, like, hey, your appraiser kind of screwed up, or I don't really get it, or here some comparables that based my value. As an agent, usually listing agent meets the appraiser at the site, right at the home. And a lot of times the appraiser, when they're trying to get close to the numbers, if it's easy, it's a slam dunk for them, they can find the comps. But usually if they can't, they'll call us up and say, hey, look, you priced the property. I'm having a hard time getting it to appraise. How did you come up with your valuation? And at that point, as an agent, you better have your stuff together, because, if you're like, I don't know, it's just what the seller wanted, that's not going to work, but sometimes I've even found to where, and you can't push these guys. I mean, the lulls now are a lot different than they used to be pre-08 crash, when the banks would call a specific, I don't know that they do that, but, it just seems like whoever they called, it got appraised, right? But the thing is, nowadays, I have been in a situation where, we've pushed subdivision limits, if there hasn't been sales. We've interviewed a lot of appraisers, and on our channel, you guys can check it out. Just type appraisers in our channel. And usually they're looking for 2 comps within that immediate subdivision. They'd like to get 3, but at least 2. And then they'll go outside of that. And if there aren't, and when I'm talking about that subdivision, I'm talking about that neighborhood. And investors and people in general, buyers in general, they don't realize that you can't just, draw a radius around the house. If they say, well, we'll go within a half a mile and, whatever, in that area, it may be, a couple blocks if you're in the city, but a lot of people think you can just draw a ring around it. And what you don't realize is you're crossing major streets and entering different subdivisions and things like that. You can't just say, well, a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath home, in that quarter-mile radius sold for, $20 more a square foot or whatever. And, you're not realizing that, hey, it's a completely different neighborhood and completely different comps, things like that. So, you can't do I'm going to say you need a good agent. But John, and I know one of your partners, their wife is a agent, right?
Yeah. So Maria's Andrew's wife. And so kind of 2 different appraisals. You're probably speaking from purchase appraiser. So like when you have a realtor helping you out, purchase appraisals, in my opinion, are a lot easier than refinance appraisals, which is what I was speaking to, because that's the topic we came off. So you wouldn't necessarily have a realtor involved in a rehab appraiser. And I'm promising you, rehab appraisers, just by happenstance, right? Because the banks have no influence whatsoever. Yeah, right. Just by happenstance, refinance appraisers are going to get tighter. I promise you that, to protect the banks. They're going to want 20, maybe 30, maybe 25, 30% equity other than 20. But when you do a purchase appraiser, it's funny. Isn't it funny how oftentimes the appraised value is the purchase or the sales price almost on the dollar? Real funny how that works out, right? And so
they get the contract.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, they know where, what they have to, a lot of people are like, oh, I bought it for $400,000. It appraised for $405,000. Well, I mean,
imagine that.
Imagine that, right? And $403,000 or something. But yeah,
right.
They had the contract. But that is a good point, John, because it is different, and these appraisers do work for the bank.
Yes. They're not supposed to be biased, but we know better.
They know who hires them, even though you're the one that pays the bill, right?
Right.
The borrower pays them. Good question there, Travis.
Let's move into this one. We've got Jeff M again. How do you recommend going about finding contractors? Should you do multiple contractors for a remodel or just one? Been thinking of buying something run down so I can get a better deal than a turnkey.
That's a great question. And Jeff, I guess that you're talking about something that you would live in. Yeah, so that is the scary part, right, John? I'll let you kind of take that one away.
Now, I'm just going to be straight up, and I think anybody that does rehabs it will admit that, dealing with contractors is probably the most stressful side of this business. And I always like to compare it to, and if you're a contractor, look, I'm not picking on you or anything. This is my evaluation of what's going on here throughout the 6 years I've been doing this and the hundreds of contractors I've dealt with. Contractors are forced to be business owners, and on all sides. That means they have to, they have to run the business. They have to do the marketing. They have to take the calls. They have to do the scheduling, because a lot of times you can't afford that when you're an upstart, right? You can't afford a scheduler, a bookkeeper, and all these things. And maybe you're just really, really good at doing roofing, right? You're just really good at that job. And that's how it started out, right? You started off by doing roofs and doing a really good job. And then you got another call and then another call. And at first you could manage it. Well, contractors also don't know when work's going to slow down or stop. So they're yes men. They say yes to every job that comes their way within reason, as long as the quote's accepted. And then all of a sudden now they have 15 roofs scheduled in 1 week. And they know absolutely that there's no way they could get to all that. And so they try to push and they reach burnout, and then they hire subpar employees to work for them. And then this just spirals out of control. This is my opinion. Okay. And this is what I see happen all too often. And so finding good contractors, for me, it used to be the t-shirt rule. Do you know the t-shirt rule? So I didn't know if you know the t-shirt rule is like, as long as they all have matching t-shirts, they're probably put together enough to like give a shot. If the contractor shows up and they're all wearing different clothes and they're just wearing whatever to the job site, they probably don't have any organization yet. So we call it the t-shirt rule of like, if they're all got matching t-shirts, we can work with this, right? They at least had that thought to at least have that process going. So anyway, start with a t-shirt rule, like try to find crews that are a little bit better put together. Also like crews that don't need money up front. That means they have some type of budgeting put together. They know how to plan and budget their money. If they're asking for 50% up front or 75% up front, that tells me that that's a scary proposition for me. I don't like paying for any work that has not been completed. Outside of material, fronting material is a little bit different. So how to find these people real quick is just like call around. First, you want to get references, Facebook, friends, family. If you know somebody that's a contractor, get references and referrals, and then always call 3. The rule of 3 on this, call 3, get 3 quotes. First thing for me, absolutely first, is showing up on time on the day you said you were going to show up. If you were 5 minutes late and you have not texted or called, I know that sounds strict, but it almost works 100% of the time. If you're more than 5 minutes late, you have not texted or called me that you're going to be late, this gives me a really good indication of how this job and partner or this relationship's going to go. And so I don't want that, right? I need things done on time when you say you're going to do them, or a viable excuse. So a good excuse is, we all have bad days, get stuck in traffic, things like that. But anyway, get your 3 quotes together. And usually the rule is don't go with the lowest, don't go with the highest, go with somewhere in between. But I like a mix. Who showed up on time, who's easy to communicate with, who doesn't need money up front, who passes the t-shirt rule, and then price kind of comes in. Okay. So, but I promise you this, if you're just starting in this business and you just go with the cheapest every time, you're going to end up with a cheap product that took longer than you expected. And more than likely, when the appraisal repairs come in and the buyer repair requests come in, you're going to do it all over again. So just be careful trying to do that method.
Yeah. And I'm going to say too, and John, they're great points. I love the t-shirt rule. I've been a contractor, so I started swinging a hammer in 1989, man. I've been a contractor for a long time. And, when it comes to, this is kind of scary, because if I were doing this and I were going to live in a house, or maybe even if it was my first flip or rental, something I'm going to hold, I would probably find a general contractor that can do all of the interviewing and all the hiring for me, and, or somebody that can just put one price together. The problem is it's not very practical when it comes to a timeline of buying a home, especially to live in, because you have to get all your prices, and that's a pain in the butt, because most of these contractors will come out, look at the job, and not even call you back. I used to get jobs just because I gave them a price. And, one of the things that I always did when I was doing residential work is I gave them a price right then and there. I would do the contract, write it up. And then I was one of those guys that had the portable printers back in the day when they were available. And I just give them their price. And a lot of my clients would be like, whoa, like, oh my gosh, that's really high or whatever. And you know what? I ended up getting the work anyway, because after the 20 people that they called, that 15 of them showed up, or maybe less, they never got back to them with a price, and they wanted to get it done. But when you're hiring a contractor, there's a couple rules of thumb, like John. Number one, it's easy for a contractor to come out and pick up a check. They're mostly attentive until that day, right? I mean, they're going to take your money. They're going to show up. They're going to be nice, all these great things until you write the check. And that's when you really see them come out. So, checking references. I always say, give me some jobs. Oh, yeah, you did that before? Oh, okay, you could put a kitchen in. Great. They'd flip through your phone and show me some of your work. And they're like, oh, well, I don't take pictures of my jobs. I'm bad with that. Give me a break. If they're proud of something, everybody has a phone. They're going to be able to instantly take their cell phone, open it up and go, boom, 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 boom. I just did this. I did that. And you might look at it and be like, well, that's great, but not my style. But ask them right on the spot. Show me some photos of the work that you've recently done, right? Get references. Because, guys, where the problem and the stress level really becomes is they show up, they take your check, and then getting them to show back up again. Because a lot of contractors they're check chasers. So what they're doing is collecting checks on one job or on a new job to pay their old debt.
They're a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, they keep themselves afloat. So, ask them about how materials are going to be paid for. Make sure that you have some kind of contract that says they can't, put a mechanic lien on your house, because if you have a disagreement with them, and a lot of contractors listening, they may be like, what? You're telling these people not, sign a contract? My contracts, they cannot place mechanic liens on the house, and because what happens is a dispute breaks out. It's not because you didn't pay them. It's because you're not agreeing with what's going on. And then they go down to the county, file what's known as lis pendens, or litigation pending. You can't sell your house now, right? Or worse yet, they put a mechanic's lien on the property and you're screwed. So, what I would do, Jeff, is firstly, if I was just buying a place to live in, I would try and find a good general contractor that isn't going to, kill you on pricing, understands that there's maybe a reward or prize at the end of the successful project, and that, check them out and go with that versus trying to find something, somebody for everything. Now, if you want to go that route, you can, if the work is not that extensive. You're just looking for kitchen renovations, bath renovations, paint, flooring, things like that, those kind of renovations, by all means, you can hire the individual contractors. But if you're removing walls, getting into structural issues, electrical contracting, plumbing, moving plumbing lines, HVAC, just hire a GC. My opinion.
Okay.
What
We've
else
got
we got?
another question here from Big Brother in Life. This could be a lender question as well. What's your thoughts on DSRC loans for acquiring rentals?
You know what he's talking about there, John?
I think he's talking about debt service loans. I thought it had a different acronym, but I think he's talking about debt service loans where they consider the income of the property and not the actual evaluation of the property itself. They just want the ability to service the debt. Usually it's about 1 to 1.25%, give or take, of like how much the rent roll has to be in over the debt. But a lot of people are using that now to like buy Airbnbs and stuff like that. Look, I've been in a fortunate position that outside of our house that we have a mortgage on, I've never really had to like get any of these types of loans. All of my properties are paid off outside of our own mortgage because we got the 2.5% interest rate. We had to take advantage of that back a year and a half ago. But so I'm not super familiar with all these loans and their terms and all that stuff. I've made myself familiar with them because I educate so that I can have this conversation. But, you know, I think they're a great way. If the property doesn't meet, if the property can't get the loan itself, or maybe you can't get the loan itself, maybe you've already passed your 10 properties. Maybe you don't want to go commercial with the loan. So a debt service from what I'm seeing seems to be a viable way to get loans to buy these rental properties. So I know people that are using them that seem to be good at what they do. So I know they're not necessarily a bad thing, but I couldn't tell you if it's right for you without a ton more information.
And you're right, John, there. I just for clarification, it was the debt service coverage ratio.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vanny. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's more geared to people that can't really qualify for more traditional kind of lending, maybe, self-employed people that, they haven't done their tax returns, things like that. I could be wrong, but
I think it's more of like a shortcut, or it's a different strategy, but I do know that they're higher interest than normal.
Yeah,
that's from my determination. So I think it's like you're willing to pay that higher interest and maybe not as favorable terms as getting traditional financing to skip all the rigmarole of the bank and the traditional financing. And that's my determination or evaluation of the loan.
So John, I'd like to kind of ask you, how do you value a property? I mean, like, what are some of the first things that you look for when you're looking to obviously not lose money? I mean, but not counting the improvements, are there anything that are real, knows for you, as far as when you're evaluating the actual land, whether it's a lot, is it, obviously not on a cliff unless you're looking for views, but what are some of the things that you look for when you pull up or you're assessing it instantly before you even really get out of the car?
Yeah. I mean, obviously location. There's a reason that saying will never die. And that's like neighbors right off the bat, right? If both neighbors you could have the most beautiful house that you rehabbed and finished, and the neighbors on either side of the house have 11 dogs each, and they have the SpongeBob blankets for curtains. I'm not picking on anybody. This is factual stuff I've seen. Like, if that happens, then the person that buys that house is going to consider all that when they buy. Like, when you pull up to the house and when they're walking in with the realtor and there's dogs barking on both sides of them, they can't even hear each other talk. Someone's mowing the lawn, or they got five junk cars out in their yard. All of that is going to play into somebody's consideration of buying that home. People buy homes for reasons. For one, because they want a home with safety. Like, there's a reason for that. They usually want quiet, as much quiet as they can get, even if they're buying in the city. Their kids are a consideration. Yards are a consideration. Things like that. Things that are yeses are like a big fenced-in yard, nice garage. Attached garages are huge pluses, especially if you don't live somewhere where the climate's like perfect all the time, like maybe San Diego, right? This is the first place I've ever owned with my wife. We bought here about 2 years ago, and it has a garage. And this is the first place we've had with an attached garage, and I'll never again not having a garage. In fact, I think the garage might be more important to me than the house, right? Just literally walking out to a heated car or moderately temperatured car all the time is so nice. But anyway, those are big yeses. Other no's for me, structural repairs that go beyond what would be feasible. We like structural repairs because that's how we got a lot of our discounted properties. We're in the hills of West Virginia. I'd say 85% of the homes we buy need structural repair, but the difference between a $10,000 structural repair that needs 2 tiebacks and something that's like, there you go, and something that's like needs $150,000 in structural repairs, but the house is only worth $200,000, that's not doable. So this is on the screen right now is one of the ones we walked through. This was not salvageable. We could not buy this house.
Nice kitchen.
Yeah, really, really nice. This has been, left behind, vandalized. It needs structural repair. It's better off just knocking it off that hill than doing anything with it. And that's why
somebody was pissed off, man.
Yeah,
when
could
they
have bought
left
that house
place
for $5,000.
Jeez. Wow. I mean, that's like somebody was angry when they left, tore all the cabinets off the wall. I've seen that. Actually, I had a situation where I represented the bank, and the bank had to evict the people that were in it so that we could sell the house. That part wasn't so good. But
the weirdest part about that house
angry.
was the multiple padlocks on the outside of all the doors. So even the kids' bedroom, obvious kids' bedrooms, like we're talking about like Superman painted on the wall, there's padlocks on the outside of all the doors. So I don't know what was going on in there, but
wow,
it was a lot.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, I feel the same way when I'm looking at a house. It's like, you can't move the neighbors. Guys, you don't realize how critical that is when we're looking at properties. You have to look over the fence. You have to see, you can't just move in and necessarily tell your neighbor to get their act together, right? Like John's saying, barking dogs. I mean, I was just at a house the other day, and I was outside walking around, and the neighbors' dogs, 3 of them, were barking so much. I mean, it was so annoying. And we were out there talking, and they didn't stop for like 20 minutes. We're out there. The dogs barked the whole time. And you think to yourself, wouldn't these owners hear their dogs barking and take them inside? I mean, what are they thinking, right? They're just listening to their dogs. Like, anyway, that's what you're going to be living next to. But, lots as well. If you're cutting the grass, what's it going to be like cutting the grass? Is it dangerous? Are you pushing a push mower up a 45-degree angle or paying somebody to do it? Now, you may be saying to yourself, I don't mind that. I don't mind the noise. I don't mind the tractor trailer truck shifting gears at my bedroom window going down the road. You may not like that or mind that, but the people that if you go to sell it to, they may. And what you're trying to do is broaden your audience, not narrow it. That's why a lot of people say that swimming pools aren't good investments. Many people don't like them. Some people are afraid to swim. They're afraid of drowning. They don't want a pool, right? So, you've got to be mindful of those types of things.
I get a lot of comments on my YouTube videos that we always paint our houses gray. And that's because gray is like a moderate tone, just like white. And the reason why flippers or rehabs do that is we need our buyer's pool as big as possible. So while you see gray every time, the buyers only see it 1 or 2 times because these aren't the same people buying every flip we do, right? So when we paint something, also it's easy. Light colors are easy to paint over, right? If we painted something cherry red, right away, we probably shrink our buyer pool by 75%. And then if somebody did want to buy it, even with the cherry red, they're going to consider like, oh man, painting over that's going to be really expensive and hard to do. So we paint everything gray with white trim or white with gray trim, and just there you go.
John, I could see SpongeBob curtains looking really nice on that gray, man. That yellow would pop, huh?
So we do it, and people, new buyers coming in that see this for the first time because they haven't seen our other, 150 properties. They don't go, why did you paint this one gray too? They just see a nice neutral color tone that works with everything. And if they want to change it after they move in, it's relatively inexpensive to paint over. You're talking one coat of what's that paint by Sherwin-Williams? The super paint. One coat of super paint and you're good to go.
The other part that's good is you can take that to the next house. So, if you get into being consistent about the products that you use, you're using the same outlets, the same white, your switches, the same everything, right? You just buy them by the contractor box and just take them from property to property to property.
Also, I do want to say, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but I do want to say, because it could confuse people. We're flipping homes in the $150,000 to $250,000 range. You can get away with that. We're not doing high-end custom homes. So if you're doing high-end custom homes, yes, you're going to need accent walls. You're going to need wallpaper in the bathrooms. You're going to need mixed tiles in your backsplashes in your showers. If you're getting in the $3-5 million range. So keep in mind, what type of properties we're flipping and why we can paint everything gray and white. We're in a certain buyer's pool. But once you reach a certain, standard. Now, one thing we do is always granite because we believe it just gives that pop to the house. It's relatively the ROI is so much better than the Formica for us. When we're selling the property, we always get our money back out for it, and we change the colors on stuff like that. So we like to change colors on tile and backsplashes, the surround in the showers. We do different things there to make our design a little bit different, but those are relatively inexpensive versus painting an entire house a different color. So again, I just wanted to say that real quick so I wasn't confusing people. Depending on what your price point is, it does or doesn't matter.
No, that's a great point. Melissa, we have any questions?
We do. John, we've got Lex C here. John, what do you think about buying a foreclosure or short sale? I'm seeing a lot of flippers trying to unload their properties. I think it will keep investors out for 2023 or part of it.
Love them. Love foreclosure. Love short. I love any way you can get a discounted property. Like all of it works as long as the numbers work. Like you can wholesale, you can fix and flip, you can Airbnb, you can hold, you can buy foreclosures, you can short sale, you can assign contracts, you can do any strategy you want. But it comes down to, do the numbers work and does it work in your market? Like you can't flip in certain areas, but you can wholesale almost everywhere, right? So I love it. Like if you can figure out a strategy to do this. Now, the problem with foreclosure sometimes, not short sales, usually you can see the property, you're getting the bank to agree to a lesser price. But with a foreclosure or a foreclosure auction, you have to be extremely careful because 9 times out of 10, you can't get into these properties. Okay. You can look through the window. A lot of people do break in and walk through them, but sometimes you cannot get into these properties. So if you are a new flipper and you don't know how to evaluate or account for things that could go wrong in that property, you better be careful, because we have bought houses from the outside, look like they just may need a coat of paint and relist it. And we get inside, there's 6 feet of water in the basement that we wouldn't have saw if maybe we didn't peek a little further than we were supposed to, right? So you have to be extremely careful or break the rules a little bit. I'm not promoting this. Maybe edit that out. It's live. I can't. But I'm not telling you to break the law. I'm telling you to protect your investment. All right. Because really, you're not supposed to go in these foreclosures, but I want to say it's pretty prevalent. People that buy foreclosures typically are going in them, even though by bank rules, you're not supposed to enter them. But I would say 98% go through them. But I'm not telling you to do so. I'm just giving you some well-known information. I'm also not admitting to it. So
usually it says, do not enter the premises or the property. It is unlawful to enter the property.
Yes.
And, I know a couple flippers. I mean, they actually do videos of them saying, okay, we're going in, they're cracking the door open. And, but here's the thing. And this is the risk, guys. John and I, we've been doing this but gosh, I've been doing it for, John's a young guy. I don't want to say that for longer. He's older than that. I haven't been doing it that long. But my point is, I've been doing it for a very long time. And, the thing is when you're buying a foreclosure property, the bank there's different processes of the sale, right? Number one, a foreclosure is a foreclosure sale is the bank is buying it potentially back, right? A lot of these are done on courthouse steps, and basically it's not already real estate owned, or what we know as the acronym REO. The bank doesn't necessarily own it. It's a foreclosure auction. And a lot of times what's happening is people show up, the bank is showing up to actually buy the house. Sounds crazy, but buy it at auction to own it, right? To get it back. And, they are outbid a lot of times by investors that pay more than, and the bank's glad, they want to get rid of the house. They don't want to own the real estate. So a lot of times, then the judge has to sign off on the order or the sale. And, but what happens here is sometimes they're occupied. So a lot of times in a foreclosure sale, the prior owner, they're still living there, right? And that's the risk of buying a foreclosure, is it could be owner occupied, so prior owner occupied, squatters. And now you have to kick them out. And however long that's going to take, whatever state you're in, things like that, they're the risks of buying foreclosures. So
I got a funny one for you on that one. We're going through it right now. We bought a house foreclosure auction, and the previous owner lived there. I went there to let them know that we purchased the property. It's not the most fun thing. We try not to buy them with people in them. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't. But anyway, we bought this property. He was outside in his SUV, and he said, "You'll get your money back." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, it was a mistake. They always say it's a mistake. Anytime it goes to foreclosure auction, it's not their fault. They didn't know about it. It was a mistake. So I just I'm very cordial. I'm not trying to start anything. I'll try to do cash for keys a lot of times and just get them to peacefully move out, because we don't want them causing damage on the way out. But anyway, he basically said, "You're going to get your money back. The bank can't do this to us." And we were like, okay, whatever. We'll just send you the purchase agreement and the documents and all that, and you'll move out after 30 days. Well, they didn't. They ended up calling our office and letting us know that they're sovereign citizens. and that the laws don't apply to them in the United States, and that they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars because people have used their social security numbers throughout the years, and that we can't foreclose on sovereign citizens because banks don't technically own anything. People own the stuff. It was the craziest letter, and there's a sovereign citizen thing out there. If you want to read up on it, it's called Reddit. It's a scam is what it is. I'm going to say that. It could be controversial for those who believe in it, but to me, it's people being scammed to believe that they're sovereign citizens. But anyway, fast forward to last week, we took them to court to kick them out. The judge ruled in our favor. They had 30 days to get out. After that, 2 weeks later, we get a new reverse lawsuit, or they're suing us now, and they're suing us for $100 million.
Oh.
Is that all?
They literally say, I feel like it's almost like a mental thing at this point. They truly believe they can get $100 million from our company because we bought their house at foreclosure, which actually has nothing to do with us. Like we're literally the middleman here. They can go after the bank, not even, but in their head maybe. But anyway, this stuff can happen. So if you're new to this and you're buying foreclosures, unless you have the time, if you're paying monthly interest on borrowed money, do not ever, under any circumstance, in my opinion, buy a house with somebody living in it, because you have no control over how long they take to get out. It can be a week, which we've had happen. We've had people sweep and mop the house and leave us the keys on the counter, just being really nice people. And they knew they messed up and didn't pay their payment. And we've had people leave after 11 months of fighting and let their dogs live in the house for 3 weeks while they weren't there and destroy the house. So we've had it all. So be very careful, because if you're paying payments on 11 months and you borrowed hard money or private money, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yep. Yeah, that is the nightmare. And so, guys, if you learn anything by what you just heard, I always make it a requirement. Now, I have purchased a couple of foreclosures, and but it is one of those things where you're like with binoculars on the side of the street trying to see if you can tell. And you can knock on the doors of the neighbors and say, hey, is anybody living in the house? And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, yeah, Joe and Mary, they live there. I think they're getting foreclosed on or whatever. But the other thing is, keep in mind, a lot of foreclosures are canceled because John said, one of the first things he said was that, they said the bank made a mistake. Well, banks don't make mistakes like that. But what we do find is you show up for a foreclosure auction and then it's called off because at the last minute they paid or something happened.
Bankruptcy a lot of times.
Bankruptcy, right, halts the foreclosure sale, right. But the thing is, make sure one of the things that can safeguard you on this is if you're buying a bank-owned property or whatever, before settlement, the day of settlement, do a walkthrough. Do a final walkthrough. Make sure that somebody's not living in the house, because if they are, just don't show up for settlement. It'd be easier that way.
We've got this one here from Vav Davis. A lot of investors are dumping properties now for tax write-offs. As a first-time home buyer, should you still grab it even if it's cherry red? LOL.
If it's
or
discounted,
not ideal.
If it's discounted, buy it. So I didn't mean to cut you off from the question there. I just you make money when you buy. Right? Like you're making money when you buy. And if it's a discounted property, I don't care if it's purple, as long as that my budget allows them for me to paint it back to gray again and still make money. I don't care if the house is upside down, as long as I can flip it right side up with my rehab budget. Now, there is some things that got to be considered. There's time and effort, right? Like there's a difference between going in and painting a house, and putting a new kitchen in it and making $20,000 on the flip, or turning a house right side up, fixing the structural, tearing it down to the beams and back again and making $20,000. Like how much you make on the property or how discounted it is matters too. But you got to calculate all that for yourself. But yeah, like if I'm buying it to live in it and I want some equity, I don't care if it's cherry red. I'll go in there and paint it myself, and I'll have some sweat equity in it, and I got it discounted. That's double dipping. So yeah, it doesn't matter. None of the like, especially nothing. What's the word for it, where you can just see the like paint or like wallpaper aesthetics. None of the aesthetics really matter. Those are all cheap fixes. Stuff like that's cheap. It can be timely. That's cheap. So yeah, absolutely. Buy cherry red houses all day long if they're 40% under market value.
I can't tell you how many times I've walked buyers into a house and they said, I can't buy this. It's pink walls, or, oh, there's way too much wallpaper. I mean, it's, you'd be surprised. I mean, a lot of people, they can't look past that. Definitely. Well, let's take a couple more. John can't hang out with us too much longer. He's got a hard stop time. We'll hang out for a little bit longer afterwards, guys, and answer some of your questions. We certainly appreciate, John, maybe a couple more questions here.
Yep, we've got Medic 311. What has been your experience taking title of an existing property with a note from your name to an LLC? I've heard different things. Some people say lender doesn't care. Others say note could be called.
Maybe subject to, I think I'm getting out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the old. I think that what this is, I don't think it's subject to. I think it's the old LLC dilemma that most real estate investors have when they're starting out. Should I buy it in LLC or my personal name? And then after it closes, if I do buy it in my personal name, after it closes, should I transfer the property to an LLC for that added protection? I hope I'm clarifying that.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think that's what they're getting at. So here's what I've gathered in my knowledge. Okay. For most, okay? Now, if you're someone that owns 100 properties, or you're buying 20 property deals at a time, or you're buying 60-unit apartment complexes, an LLC is most likely your ideal strategy. But for most starting in this, you're going to probably want to buy the property, your first rental, your second rental, your third rental, in your personal name, especially if you're going to refinance it, because when you go to the bank to get a loan, you can get traditional loan and not commercial loan. We're talking 30-year terms, and better rates when you go to do that loan. Now, what this person's talking about is, okay, I bought it in my personal name. I got that traditional good financing over the commercial financing, but now I want that added LLC protection, that legal protection. So I'd like to transfer the property into my LLC name now that the loan is closed. What they're worried about is what's called the due on sale clause. So technically speaking, when you transfer that property from your personal name to your LLC, you sold the property. Even if it was just for $1 or just to transfer it, the bank could technically say, no, we sold it to Jon Schoeller. We didn't sell it to Jon Schoeller Consulting LLC. We want you to pay the note. Now, the likelihood of them doing that is very low as long as you continue to pay the mortgage, but you are opening up yourself to a recession, a collapse on the economy, when banks love to call notes to get money back in, and they will find you if you've done that. So it's a possibility. Again, I'd probably put a percentage on it less than 5%. You get a note called due, but why open yourself up to the exposure? Now, if that 5% is worth it to you over the fact that your tenant sues you and now you're an LLC, then that's fine. But my argument is have a coverage on the property, right? A liability policy of $1 million or whatever the property is worth and then some, and then have an additional umbrella policy on top of that of 1 to 2 million. It's actually pretty cheap. And then do that for all your properties. Now, if a tenant sues you, they have to get through they always go after the insurance first before the LLC. The LLC is the last to ever try to get punctured anyway. And it's hard in a lot of states. But anyway, they have to get through about $2 or $3 million in coverage before they ever get to any legal, like trying to sue you personally or something like that. So we have enough insurance to cover you in that case. And 2 to 3 million should be more than plenty, depending on the size of the asset, as long as you're not a negligent landlord. Okay? Because if you're a negligent landlord, like if you know the stairs are broken, you keep getting reports the stairs are broken, and you do nothing to fix them, and then the tenant falls through and dies on those stairs, they're probably going to get the $2 to $3 million insurance coverage and come after you, and probably get through that LLC anyway because you were negligent. So it's kind of long-winded, but I know that I researched this ad nauseum to myself. But buy it in your personal name, have enough coverage, keep it in your personal name unless you grow to a point where you think an LLC is more beneficial than the financing advantages you get as a personal. Did that make sense?
No, man, you nailed it. That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of banks won't finance LLCs. So if you're refining, like John is saying, you have to go to a commercial bank a lot of times, excuse me, and they don't give you the terms. Commercial financing, they may do a amortization schedule over 25 years, but they have a balloon payment in year 10 or something like that. Very hard to get 30-year fixed commercial notes from traditional banks. There are lenders out there that will give a 30-year to an investor, but you're definitely paying more for it than you would if it's in your name. And we do see a lot of questions coming in, sort of the same as subject to, not exactly, excuse me, how, this question was John, you were spot on, but subject to, same kind of thing. You're putting it in your name, not the existing borrower. The bank, as long as the payments get paid, a lot of real estate attorneys have said to me that the banks don't usually, call the due on sale clause as long as they're getting paid, but let a payment get skipped or start falling into, delinquency, they could pull it right away. John, we're going to let you go, buddy, because we know you got to get out of here and get on to your next thing. Man, we are so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being on our show again. Guys, all of John's information, some parting thoughts there, John?
Yeah, I just really appreciate you having me on. It's always a good time. You guys are a well-organized operation here, and I love what you're doing here. You're at 23,000 subscribers. I hope the next time I come on at 100,000 subscribers, and we can do this again. I love answering the questions, love helping people out. If you want to find me, my YouTube, the Schoeller family on that YouTube as well. Follow me on Instagram at The Frugal Investor. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we help some people out tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I'm grateful to have you back.
Thank you so much. So I don't want to mess something up here. Do I just click the X, leave studio, and I'm out of here?
That's all you got to do, buddy. And then we'll continue to answer your questions, guys, as John is exiting here. And
real quick, if you guys put any clips together of this, like Instagram content or something, email it out to me. I'll share it on my story.
That's great. Awesome.
All right.
We definitely appreciate that.
Have a good night.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Hold on, I got to get my Instagram picture real quick. Don't want to mess up your show. I'm out of here. See you guys.
All right. See you, buddy.
Bye, John.
All right, guys. John is great. We're always grateful to have him and all of our guests on our show. But we'll continue answering your questions, guys. I've been flipping and renovating houses for the better part of 25, 30 years. I've been a contractor since 1989. So we'll answer some more questions here before we call it a night.
Yep. This one was directed to John, but Todd, I think that you are fully capable of answering. We've got Lex C here. What do you see going forward in 2023 regarding flippers? Will they stay out?
I think that you're always going to have flippers that are going to enter the market because they're new investors that haven't been burned yet, right? They have some money and they think, maybe the bottom is here. And I think that's the big thing, is that we don't know when the bottom is going to actually, fall. And, you can make money flipping houses, at any time, it really comes down to how long do you want to hold the property, right? So if you're buying a property right now that you think is a good deal and you can flip that property in 30 or 45 days, which I always like to do, at least, 90 days, which, is required for a lot of loans, for buyers to be able to get a loan on it. A lot of the FHA loans, 30 or 90 days, is a kind of like a curing period. But if you want to flip it quick, now's not the time to do it. But if you're getting into a really big renovation and you can get a good price on a property, and maybe it's going to take you a year or so in order to get it ready for sale, or you're going to be living in it, that may change the way you're thinking. But I mean, who knows how long this is going to be, this downward trend, until we start to see, any kind of appreciation again with housing. I think that as we go into 23, we're going to see still falling prices. And, that's the risk. Can you get it at enough of a deal right now that you feel comfortable that it's not going to go below that in 6 or 9 months?
Mm-hmm. How about this one? We've got Spirit Detective. What if you refinance after transferring ownership?
Not really sure that I understand what you're saying. After transferring ownership, refinance. I mean, so you already bought the house, you have a loan on it, and now you want to refinance it. Maybe if the interest rates are coming down, it has to appraise. So, here's the problem. If you bought it 6 months ago and you're trying to refinance it now, you're probably going to have to put more money down, more cash down to refinance it, because it may be worth less money now than when you bought it. And again, depending on how much cash you put down, if you were a borrower that only put down 3 or 5%, you could be underwater. So it's risky. It's risky. You can't always refinance.
We got some questions here. I know we talk about this on our Tuesday night live. Love these Tuesday videos. Question: I live in Colorado and want to find a good agent when I do desire to buy a house. Did I hear that you can help with finding a good agent even if I live in Colorado?
We definitely can, and we've got some Colorado contacts. If you email us, Joe can put the email up on the screen here. You could certainly send us an email, and we'll connect. And we'll find you somebody, hopefully we already have somebody in our network that we can point you to.
Yep. It just bear with us a little bit because we do get a lot of inquiries on this. Takes a little bit of time, but we will be responding to you. Absolutely. We've got Makiso Extra. Hi, Todd and Melissa. Should you hold off on major renovations for primary residence with cost of materials being so high?
I guess a lot of it is dependent upon whether you're going to do the work yourself or whether you're going to hire somebody and the materials that you're going to use. So I am finding that everything is higher across the board, but I have a feeling that some of these prices aren't going to come down. I think the inflation on some of the, home improvement store items are going to remain elevated. We could even see them go higher. Depending on, what happens with transportation over the next 6 months or so, fuel, a lot of talk on, tightening, fuel supplies, things like that. I just saw something. We had the Keystone Pipeline, I think it was, had a big leak in Kansas. It's disrupting a lot of, fuel supply. So we might see some volatility in products. If you have the property and you're going to do a lot of the work yourself, or you can get, a contractor that is reasonable and fair, you're going to build equity from the material cost. So, I would say, your improvements don't over improve is the big key. That, if you're planning on selling anytime in the next 5 years, be careful that you're not over improving the neighborhood. You always want to be, the nice but less improved in the nicer neighborhood, or, better homes around you will pull your home up. So just be mindful to that. Know what, is happening in the neighborhood. If you're putting in hardwood floors, is that common? Or, is mostly carpeting common in the neighborhood? Just, before you go putting $50,000 or $60,000 in the floors in your house, you want to make sure that these are constructive returns. They're going to be returns that if you need to sell, you will get your money back. So that's the more of the risk than the elevated product cost, in my opinion.
Just want to take another shout out here to Real Estate Mindset. Thank you so much, because Sachs Realty has the best podcast and jackets. Number 23, like Jordan and Lex followed up with that. I agree, Travis. I want to buy a jacket.
All right. Well, we might have to put jackets on our channel here. We might have to put these. They seem to be popular.
Yes, they are. Danuska, great to hear from you. Todd and Melissa, great to be with you again tonight. Todd, please explain again the process of refinancing a house. What are the steps for a buyer that put 20% down during the purchase?
Yeah, well, you're going to be in a lot better position, I would imagine, to qualify for that refinance. Danuska, I am not a loan officer, but, really when you're refinancing, you want to look at the cost of doing so, right? If there's what are those recording costs and fees? What are the lender's fees? And you always want to bounce it off on how long you're going to stay in the house. And, and I think in a couple of weeks ago, we had, a loan officer that was basically saying that loan officers are pumping this idea, oh, don't worry about it, date the rate, you can refinance later. But they don't really talk about what the point difference should be to encourage you to refinance, right? Like, is it a half a point? Is it a full point? Like if interest rates go from 6.5 to 5.5 or 5 3/4, does that make sense? They're the kinds of questions to ask the lenders, because a lot of times you're just stuck in that loan that you're in because it doesn't make financial sense based on, the fees to refinance and then how long you're going to be there still in the house. You may only be there 3 to 5 years, and it just doesn't make sense. So I would ask, determine how long you think you're going to be there. Ask a lender, what is that percentage point discount that makes the most sense? And what are the fees associated with refinancing? But when I'm talking about money, how much money you put down, the new lender is going to order an appraisal, and wherever that loan value to appraised value, wherever that lender is requiring, that's where your house has to appraise. And if you bought it 6 months ago and you only put 3% down and your house has declined 10 or 15% in value, that's going to be a problem. You're going to have to come to the table with money in order for the bank, to meet the new appraisal to what they're comfortable lending you to that amount. And as John has just said, on refinancing, he thinks that the appraisers are a lot stricter, a lot more strict, a lot tighter in their valuation.
And then we've got
That's a great question.
Comment here from Fuwa. Hello from China. I have been learning so much from you guys. You are my favorite real estate channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello,
Yes.
China. We appreciate you watching from China.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And that's pretty much wrapping up all the questions for this evening. You guys have had some good ones tonight.
Well, guys, we appreciate you watching, and we wish you a very happy holiday season. And if we don't see you on our next podcast, I know a lot of people are traveling, things like that. You can always watch them later. And if you like this video, you can hit the thumbs up. It'll let Melissa, myself, and John know that you did. And yeah, we always appreciate when you subscribe to our channel. If you haven't done so, we're going to cover a lot of great, topics coming up. Next week, we have a financial advisor coming on. And I think that's next week, right, Melissa?
It is. It's next Tuesday. Yep. Week from today.
Yep. So, we're going to talk about the current market. If you guys are investing in securities or bonds or stocks, whatever, we're going to talk about, what this expert thinks is going to happen in the stock market moving forward the next certainly 12 months, and kind of go over a lot of the talk about the economy and the dollar and all this stuff we're hearing about, gold. And just the other day I was listening to a news broadcast that was talking about, Putin maybe wanting U.S. to pay for fuel, oil with gold instead of U.S. dollars. So a lot of questions we're getting, I'm curious about it, where things are going. And so we're bringing in a financial expert advisor to kind of address your questions. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, you want to get the alerts when we're going live or that we upload videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe now. Make sure you hit that bell. It lets you know, it's the alert bell when we upload. So Melissa,
yeah,
thanks
his
so
name
much.
is thank you. And just so everyone knows, his name is Josh Rivers. So we're really looking forward to having him. And thank you, Todd. Another great show. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
See you.